look into the camera. I will talk, but I'm going to look over there.
I think we should do a blooper like this.
There you go. You just did.
Okay.
Silence!
So today we're talking with the Pressley Girls. The Pressley Girls are my daughters, Katie and Corey.
Yes.
They've been playing traditional Appalachian music, or at least singing it, since they were just basically a little more than toddlers. Actually, even when they were toddlers, they tried. They pretty much come out of the womb talking and attempting to make some kind of noise that people thought was singing. So today we're going to talk to them about what it's like to be a traditional Appalachian musician, a performer in Appalachia today. So girls, let's start, I guess. Why don't you start? I could tell my version of how I think you started playing music or how you started singing, but what about you, Corey? Tell us your first memory of music.
Oh man, that's a good question. Gosh, if I had to say maybe my very first memory, it probably either would have been singing in church or hearing music in church, or we had such a musical family, and our grandpa, when he played music and when they had a band, they would practice in our basement before, as Katie likes to say, that it got really junky. It would probably be one of those things. But then, too, there was just music everywhere. We had music in the cars. There was always CDs, radios. We had a really cool stereo that we had in the house, and there was just always music. Yeah.
That's pretty much would be my answer. That that summed it all up. I think probably, truthfully though, the very first memory probably had to be Pap and his friends playing music in the basement. And it was just, I don't know if it's, I almost can hear it the same way I heard it then. I don't know if it's what I hear, but it's a feeling, and I still have the same feeling that I had then. And it's like this really kind of familial feeling. And when Mom would put us in the bed and tell us to go to sleep, we were like babies, so there's no reason to shut the door. We might, who knows, she might shut the door and we might climb a dresser, which we would do a few times. Anyway, what I remember is she would turn the lights out and say goodnight, go to bed, and as soon as she would leave out of the room, we would jump in the floor and just kind of lay down in the floor with every intention of going to sleep, but we just wanted to listen, and with our ears pressed to the floor, we could hear the music just that much better. It seemed that much closer. And I think that's probably my first memory. And like I said, I don't know if it's so much a sound or is a feeling of just pure happiness. I loved it. It was awesome. And then we would fall asleep to it, and then we would do it again the next time. And of course I remember the big stereo because it had all these buttons, and I wanted to push the buttons. But we would say, will you play us this? Will you play us that? And it had a let's see, was that a cassette or was that a...
It had like a 4-thing cassette, because I remember that part was close to the ground where we could see it, and there was just 4 things.
And then we'd just take tapes in and out, and whatever we wanted to play, they would play, so whatever we wanted to hear. So, yeah, it's funny to say, but that's all that is probably over 20 years ago. It's a long time ago to remember.
So how young were you when you first started actually performing? Like I was saying, you'd go around the house singing, and you liked in those days Shania Twain and
we listened to all kinds of stuff.
Marty Robbins and all different people, like you're saying, of course, Pap's music. But how old were you, do you think, when you first started singing, and where was that? How did that happen?
I think we were... when we actually started singing and there was other people, and it wasn't just in our house or us goofing, would probably have been in church, in the choir, and that would have been like, I don't know, we were probably like 6 or 7, something like that. And then later on, as far as like actually performing as an artist in front of people, I don't know, we might have been like 13, 14.
Well, but before then, before we could play instruments, that was around the time we actually picked up instruments. But even before that, when we just, would sing, if Pap and Paul played music, our grandpa and his son, our uncle, we would just sing a song. We might run in just enough to sing a song wherever they were at, community center, family get-together, whatever, and then run back out and play. So we did that for a long time until we kind of picked up instruments and learned to play ourselves.
So when you decided that you were going to pick up instruments, how did that process evolve?
Really for me, I had the fiddle first, and I don't really have any memory how that came about, but we were in the 8th grade and through a school program, and Atlanta Symphony director guy, Dr. Richardson. He had directed the Atlanta Symphony for like 30 years, and he would come and teach the kids. And I remember I was in like the beginner class because I'd never played, I didn't know anything, and then they put me in the advanced class because I was missing math, and I was about to go to high school. They didn't want me to miss math. You know, and I enjoyed that, but I didn't stick with it. It was hard, so I did that for maybe 2 years, and then I quit, and there was a guitar in the house, because Dad actually plays some guitar, and I thought, well, I'm just going to pick that up. It'll be easier, and it was much easier, so I stuck with that, but I don't really remember what made me want to play the fiddle. I don't have any remembrance of how that come about. I think maybe it was just more like something the school was offering, and it was like, hey, you should do this, and I was like, okay. But I think the guitar, part of what made me want to play that was that the fiddle was really hard, but two, I think, if I remember right, it was all the country songs, because I mean, we like all kinds of music, but I love old country, and I remember hearing, you know, Marty Robbins, Alan Jackson. I mean, he's not that old, but those kind of people on the radio, and I loved it, and I wanted to be able to play that. So I think for me that was largely part of what inspired me. But then two, music was such a familial thing, so when we played with, or sang with Uncle Pa and Pap, you know, we couldn't play instruments, and I wanted to be a part of that. It's like we could sing, but I couldn't do anything else, and I think that was part of it too. I wanted to be able to have an instrument that I could play.
For me, I actually started on piano. The piano is the first instrument, even though I was surrounded with guitars and mandolins and all of that kind of stuff growing up. Something about the piano just mesmerized me. And of course, there was a piano and an organ in church. And I just was just totally taken back by the piano, and I just really wanted to learn how to play it. So we had a piano in the house, and I took lessons for a little while, and this was more of the style of playing that I was doing is kind of what they call boom chick style. It's a kind of a heavy rhythm, more like an old time kind of beat, and so it would work great for most of the stuff that we do. It would have worked great for, and would work great, I shouldn't say it would have, but works great for square dancing, contra dancing, hoedown music, you know, things like that. But I also wanted to be able to play more like country piano, just a really pretty backup, really pretty fill-in that was less rhythmic, maybe in the sense of like for dancers. But I did that for a little while, and then we would go to jams, and we were so lucky that we had so many people that invited us to go to these jams and were very encouraging and helpful. And I soon learned, if you did go to a jam and you were lucky enough to be there with a piano, chances are you weren't the only piano player, so you had to take your turn or wait your turn. And me kind of being the child on the scene, I totally understand. I was never the one first in line, and sometimes I was never brave enough to be like, can I play? So I wouldn't play. We would go to the jams, and I would just kind of sit there. And so I was like, I want my own instrument. I want to do my own thing. And so Corey had already stopped with the fiddle at that point, and we still had it. And of course, Mom, you said, well, I've paid for it, and it's not going to sit here and go to waste. Why don't you see what you can do? And that's a very mild version of what I say. Mom said, somebody's going to play it. I'm not playing it. Your daddy's not playing it. Corey's not, and the dog's not. So you figure it out, you know. But anyway, I really liked the fiddle because it seemed accessible in the sense of it's small. It's very easy to take with you. It's not a cumbersome instrument. It's not even as cumbersome necessarily as traveling with a guitar. And I soon found out that, oh gosh, I've never been accused of being a patient person, but that was just almost more than I could stand. It was so hard, and I wanted it so bad. I think that's probably the only reason that I stuck with it, is I was so angry. I didn't want to lose. I took it as a challenge, and I was like, this fiddle is beating me. It's playing me, and I don't like that. I want to be in charge. I want to play the fiddle. I don't like being beat at this. So it was kind of that frustration and anger that kept me on playing. And then eventually I got to where I was like, hey, this isn't so bad after all. Hey, I'm kind of getting the hang of it. But for the most part, I mean, both of us, I just kind of picked it up and figured it out. I had Corey to show me what she knew, but it was just like, you want it bad enough, you just figure it out. So then I started playing the fiddle. And then recently Corey bought an electric guitar, and I wanted to be like Corey, so I bought one. Which actually, truth be told, the very first instrument that I ever actually picked up and played was a guitar. It wasn't a piano. It was very short-lived, but I remembered a few things from that. And if we have a mandolin, I really should play that. There's no excuse, because everything is the same. Anything I know here, I could just, and Corey from her fiddle days, anything that she remembers, she could transfer over. But it's kind of weird how I started out on piano, Corey started out on fiddle, and then we switched, because, I mean, when you're comparing instruments, then that's what you would match up to a piano would be a guitar. It's the same way, and that helps me a little bit. My understanding of the guitar kind of is, I kind of think of it in terms of piano from what I remember, but that's it.
So to play off of that, how you, like you were saying, Katie, that y'all just basically picked it up. So that's an interesting thing about your music, is that you play by ear. You never learned to read music. You can read it a little bit, but that wasn't the basis of your foundational for music, whether it was the piano, the guitar, the mandolin, the fiddle, any of the different things. You play by ear, so that makes you a little different. And you learned, really, your biggest influence, I guess, to play by ear was Paul and Pat, but also the people that hang around the John C. Campbell Folk School. So can you talk a little bit about that, about playing by ear?
You know, and that was the interesting thing when I was learning the fiddle, and I think that might have been part of why I didn't stick with it, is it was classical music, and you had to be able to read music. And a lot of those kids could, because they had kind of come up doing that. Some of them were younger than I was. Some of them were, that school just went through the 8th grade, so some of them were as old as I was. But that, I just had never read music, and that was hard. I think if I had grown up reading music, it might have been easier. But, you know, and that's probably ultimately what made me kind of quit the fiddle. But then when I picked up guitar, you know, the only way I learned was just with Paul and Pap. I would just sit and play the songs with them. They would show me a chord, and then they would be like, okay, you know, these 3 chords, they're in this song, here's the key of the song, and then I would just watch and follow and listen, and it just kind of clicked. That makes a lot more sense to me than reading music. I feel like, not to sound braggy or anything, but reading music just slows me down. It'd be like I'd have to learn a whole other completely different thing to help me do what I already do. So I don't really feel the need to learn it, but it was really just that, just watching people's hands, listening to the chord changes, you know, and once I knew kind of all the basic chords, that was a lot easier. But until then, it was just people saying, okay, here's how you play a G chord, here's how you play a C chord, and then just kind of putting them together. But being around it so much and watching and listening, you just kind of absorb it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. 2 things. One is, there really is a lot to be said for just constantly being around it and being exposed to this kind of music, and then hearing it over and over and over. So then when it was time for us to kind of pick it up, we wanted to. It was easier because I've spent my whole life listening to what I was going to play. And the other thing is, that's really interesting, is me and Corey have completely opposite views, because Corey plays rhythm and I play pretty much only melody. So as a melody only player, I don't read music. Like, I could not hold up a piece of music and be like, I've never seen this in my life, and play it. I could not do that. I might tell you, okay, that's what key it's in, here's what the notes are, but I would never be able to do that instantly fast enough to actually play it, which is where the benefit is. The benefit of going to a jam and someone says, well, I know this song, but if you don't, here's the music, and then you just play it with them even though you've never played it. I really always wanted to be able to do that, but from day one, I kind of had to have a loose understanding of, you know, what are your keys, what are your notes, what notes are in each key, where's your arpeggios, where's this, where's that, because that's all I'm playing is literally note for note, the melody. So of course I could just match it by what each tone is compared to where my fingers are, but I kind of had to learn the notes of each key and the patterns and all of that. And so I do think I have a loose understanding of music theory, which has helped me with the guitar, and it kind of helps you put it all together.
I think so much of it too, though, is just based on how you learn. Everybody learns so different, and we had a semester of music theory in college, and we actually had a semester of piano, and that's what this makes me think of, because everyone could read music, you know,
except us. Literally
the whole program, you know. And so
yeah, and we held everybody back. They just give us the look like, why you two?
They weren't super happy about us being in their class, but everybody just learns different. So I remember, you know, they could read it, and it was nothing for them, even if some of them didn't play the piano. For the teacher would have put music in front of them and then play it. But I saw it and was like, I could figure this out, but I need like 6 hours to figure out what this is. And what I would do, we had a piano at the house, in the house at the time, we don't now, but what I would do is I would come home and write in pencil what the notes were, and then I would sit down to the piano and then I would just memorize it.
Hunt them out and memorize
it,
yeah.
I could play it. I couldn't play it looking at the music. I would just kind of blankly stare at the music and play from memory. And so you had to go back and play for her. There was so many like little keyboards in the class, and everybody had their own one. And I remember
she would ask us
to play, and I would just try to like pick a spot at the music and not look anywhere else because it threw me, and just play it from memory because that's all I could do. And that worked for a short period of time. But of course, as you went on up, you know, we would have had to learn more, and that probably wouldn't have worked. But I think everyone learns different, and if you learn by reading music, then that's great.
Yeah, what's the hurt?
Yeah, I think it could really help you, but that just never worked for me.
I will say, I've from what I've seen, it is a lot easier for people who play by ear to learn how to read music. It is not easy for people who grew up learning to read music to play by ear, because they're like, what are you talking about? Where do you start? How do you even know what to do? And when we were in college, and that was the piano 1 and piano 2, every music major took it, regardless if you were instrument or voice focused, you had to do it. And our teacher was named Miss Keong Wong. And Miss Keong Wong was a really nice lady, and she was really smart, but her English was pretty much non-existent. So we never knew. I never knew what she was telling me to do, but she would ask us to play. She would say, "Can you play?" And I did the same thing. I would look at the music, pretend I was looking at it, and I would play. And once or twice, she looked at me and said, "Are you reading? You reading the music?" "Yes, I am reading the music." "Are you reading the music?" And I was trying. Like I wasn't trying. I was trying, but that was the struggle of, I don't need the music. Just play it once, tell me where you're playing it, and show me, and I'll do it again. I'll do it back.
And that's what I think is cool, is so many people learn differently. I think that's an amazing thing, to be able to hand someone a sheet of music and be like, play this. And they can play it just based on reading it. I mean,
I would love to
that's
be able
insane.
to do that.
But then I think it's also cool to be like, okay, here's the song we're playing and here's the key. And
it's fun.
You know,
it's a challenge to be like, I've never played this, and once you've played one song, you know, you can say, well, I've seen this before, I've heard this before, I've done this before, and you draw patterns.
In the kind of style we play, you know, if you know what key it's in and you just know a handful of chords, you can pretty much figure it out.
So now that we kind of have your background about how you got started in music, I know one of you used to tell the joke that you didn't have a choice, but you really did have a choice. Nobody made you, nobody forced you.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you've kind of talked about how you play by ear, which is a tremendous gift, if you ask me, to be able to hear a song and then turn around and play it. But like you were saying, there's benefits to both, and it's amazing to say, here's a book, and you just flip through it and play any song you want. That's amazing too. But let's focus on, I wanted to focus on Appalachian music. So that's such a broad term and may mean so much to so many different people. But what does it mean to you? Can you, when you think about it, does it like fall into like, you know, a few categories, or is it you just think it's so broad people make up what it is, or what do you think about it?
For me, it does fall into a couple categories. I mean, when I think like really truly about Appalachian music, I think, of course, guitar, fiddle, banjo, mandolin. I think about more old time type tunes. You know, simple melodies, simple rhythm, songs that, like, you know, even gospel songs like I'll Fly Away, especially gospel. That was a huge part of it, because I mean, back in the day when people in Appalachia were so geographically isolated, that's a lot of where they did music, was church, whether they had instruments or not. So I definitely think of that. But then sometimes too, I think of maybe just like later on in time, not as much like back in the day, but I even think about country music as being a part of that. Some country, not new country, not stuff like that, but maybe country of like the 50s and 60s, maybe on up to the 70s and 80s. But I think for me it kind of encompasses all that.
I think for a lot of people, that's anything Appalachian is a hard and fast definition. 9 generations in the ground, you know, or you're not Appalachian. I do think it is hard and fast with some people, but for me, I simply only think of just music that is played in the region. Music that was played then, because we all tend to think of history as behind us, but history is now and history is in front of us too. So it's just music that was played here, music that people played, and usually, just like anything else, whether it be music or art or anything, it kind of carries a theme. It kind of carries something special along with it that would make it different than other music, like jazz music or things like that. So, of course, I think of the instruments that they played: a banjo, a mandolin, a fiddle, and a guitar, and a stand-up bass, and then I think about certain artists. I think a lot of the old time fiddle, but I think of some of and I'll be the first to tell you, maybe they're not my favorite, but I think of some of the old, like, a cappella ballads, like the long ones, that tell all these stories, and that's a lot of the Appalachian music. I'll be here to tell you, I've heard some of it, I ain't heard it all, and a lot of it, some of us ain't ever heard, because it's songs that were carried down through Appalachia, through generations, and they might have meant something for one family that Mamaw wrote in 1800 about her family and her experience. Right. So maybe only that family has heard that, which would be really special, but a lot of the music we've all heard, and it's just common to the region. It's common themes: the love of the land, the pride in the hard work, family, and just different things about Appalachia, and God, and the mountains, and your love for each other and your neighbors, and I mean, those are all common themes. So you put the fiddle in there, and then it's I'm partial because I like my own instrument, and then it's all made up.
So thinking about those different genres of music that you just described, or what Appalachian music means to you, another type of this really common in Appalachia, which is just like you were talking, almost like the fiddle and the banjo and the mandolin, the bass, you think about your voices as an instrument, like you were talking about the ballads or the shape note singing, which one time we went to a school for shape note singing, so several times actually.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, so that's an interesting part. But I'm thinking specifically for the music of the Pressley Girls, you use a technique called harmony singing, duet harmony. So that's almost like another thing that's really common in Appalachian music too, is harmonies, whether it's family or church choirs or quartets or anything like that. But maybe you could give us an example of one of those harmony songs, maybe even a gospel song.
I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear calling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of His voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that He gave to me within my heart is ringing.
was beautiful. Thank you. That was a great example of the influence of gospel music on Appalachian, the tradition of music in Appalachia. Example of that wonderful harmony, some people call blood harmony. So thank you for that. When I think about how long both of you have been performers, going a long time now, going around, you've been up north, you've been to New England, playing Appalachian music. Paul likes to tease, my brother Paul, the girl's uncle that plays with us, he likes to tease that we play in the tri-state area. And we do. It's really easy because our county borders 2 states, so it makes it really easy. But since you've been going around, you played in high school, well, you played before high school, I guess, you were at least singing. Playing in high school, playing in college, playing today, has that ever made you really popular with your peers, with people around you?
No. I mean, it never made us popular with our peers, but we still just kind of did it anyway because I just wanted to, you know. It was something that I was interested in, but no, we didn't have a lot of friends that did that.
Not really. I think it's just, I mean, most kids didn't play music and they just weren't raised like that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just we didn't have that in common really with anyone.
There are some people like you guys, though,
yeah.
young people.
Oh, yeah. Sure, we just weren't where they were.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about the importance of, like, I know I've been to one thing the North Carolina Arts Council held for young millennials, traditional musicians. How do you think, just down the road at John C. Campbell Folk School, they do the Junior Appalachian Musicians Program. What do you think about the importance of that, of people like your age? You're almost ambassadors for it. Not just you two, I'm saying all of those kids, all the people, the Jones brothers, the different people that showed up at the thing for the North Carolina Arts Council had.
I mean, I think it's a dying art, and so it's not something that you're seeing a lot of across any generation, young or older. So I think it is really important that we are young people and we're still doing it, and then that way I can know, well, at least I will be able to pass that on to all the music that I've made to my kids or to other people that I know, future generations. And I think a lot of things about Appalachia it's like I said, it's kind of not many people are doing it anymore. It seems to be a dying tradition, so that kind of just makes it feel even that more urgent and important to get younger people involved and see that it continues.
Yeah, I mean, it's preserving culture. I mean, no matter what kind of culture you're talking about, you wouldn't want that to die out and it end up one day, you know, oh, it was these lost people we know nothing about. I mean, that would be super
or we're all the
sad.
same. That's really boring.
You know, you wouldn't want that to happen. So I think it's super important to preserve it, and I think it's super important for kids to get involved because just naturally as the generations go and people age, you know, these things die out as generations kind of pass on, and you need the young people to keep it going.
That's the future. That's who's going to carry it on, because I'm not going to be here forever. I mean, I'm 25 now, but I got this bad back. You know, I don't know where this is headed. No, I'm joking. But yeah, it is important to...
And I just think it's so good for the kids. I think that's so cool. I mean, if I look back, I wish I could have picked up an instrument way before 13 or 14. You know, if you could learn and get into this kind of stuff when you're super young, I just think it's great for kids.
It's exciting, it's fun, it gives them something to work toward.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding to see that kind of progress made when you start to work on something and you get better at it and you see that forward moving progress. It feels really good. So why not provide them with something enjoyable like that, and then at the same time be carrying on this Appalachian tradition. So
well, thanks, girls, for talking to us today. People want to know where they can find your music, where they can find out more about you. You've got gigs coming up all summer long. Where can you want to give a little shout out about yourselves, where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, so we've got thepressley.girls.com. That's our website. We're on YouTube as The Pressley Girls. We're on Facebook and Instagram as The Pressley Girls. Definitely look us up on YouTube. We're trying to grow that.
Yeah, so YouTube's what all the kids are doing, I hear. Look at what Mama's doing. So we do have an Etsy shop. That's where we sell the CDs, and there'll be a link to that. We can probably put one in the description down below. I just wanted to say that. That's fun. But also... yeah, the website is where we'll keep stuff updated currently. So if you go, you're like, oh, I want a CD. And if you do, thank you for supporting us. That's great. Our Etsy shop is only currently closed because we will be out of town for a little while. So when we come back, whenever we decide to come back, I might just stay gone forever. When we come back, we'll open it back up, and then you'll be able to get a CD if you're interested. And thanks for hanging out with us.
I'll put all the Pressley Girl links down below in the description. please do go check them out on YouTube and subscribe to their channel. If you want to find out where they're playing this summer, maybe if you're in the area, you can come to a live show. Look at thepressley.girls.com. And since everyone's been seeing you hold that fiddle the whole time, Katie, how about you play us out with a fiddle tune?
Yes, I can do that. Alright, Quartet, we're going to play a little tune called Golden Slippers. That's an old time tune. Actually, that's one of the very first songs I remember hearing played on a fiddle when we were hanging out at old time jams. Fun, everybody knows it, and it's enjoyable. You can all play it together. Had to make sure I knew how to start it off there. I told you I saw the world's biggest woolly worm out here, and that's the one I was talking about, and that was about 2 weeks ago, so yeah, he probably dead.
He's just collecting dust at this point.
Hey, gross. You could probably dry him out and use him as a bristle brush to clean stuff. Okay, sorry. That's what they look like, but they ain't stiff enough.
Do I look muscular like this?
I don't know, but we gotta get this on the road because we got other stuff to do, and I'm gonna cut them rocks.
Well, we can't do it till people be quiet.
Okay.